Control your screaming child, or I will have federal security drag you both off this aircraft right now. Before we dive into one of the most shocking stories of public humiliation and epic revenge you will ever hear, I have to ask you a question. Have you ever been judged as a parent, shamed in a public space when all you were trying to do was comfort your child? Let me know in the comments below, because your story matters. And you're going to want to make sure you are subscribed with notifications on, because the ending of this story will shake you to your core. The sound that echoed through the pristine, hushed cabin of Apex Air's first-class section wasn't just a slap. It was a verdict. It was the sharp, ugly crack of a judgment delivered, flesh against flesh, a sound that sliced through the gentle hum of the Boeing 777's auxiliary power. Brenda Carlson, a flight attendant with a smile as brittle as old plastic, had just struck Dr. Anya Sharma across the cheek. Anya's palm immediately flew to her face, not in retaliation, but in sheer, stunned disbelief, her other arm instinctively tightening around her 8-month-old son, Rohan, who was nestled against her chest. The baby's distressed cries, which had been the source of the conflict, instantly morphed into shrieks of terror, fueled by the sudden violence and his mother's sharp intake of breath. Around them, the sanctuary of first class transformed into a courtroom. iPhones emerged from Gucci purses and the pockets of bespoke suits, their lenses focusing like a firing squad. These passengers, titans of industry and inheritors of old money, weren't recording an assault. They were documenting what they perceived as the long-overdue disciplining of an entitled, disruptive passenger who didn't belong in their exclusive world. "Well, it's about time," a woman draped in pearls and cashmere whispered to her husband, her voice dripping with venomous approval. "Someone with a spine!" Anya's cheek pulsed with a hot, searing pain, a blooming fire that threatened to consume her composure. But beneath the surface of that pain, a cold, crystalline calm began to form. Her dark, intelligent eyes, the eyes of a woman who had performed 12-hour neurosurgeries under impossible pressure, remained fixed on Brenda. With hands that trembled only slightly, she adjusted the soft pashmina blanket around Rohan, her movements deliberate and graceful. On her lap, her boarding pass lay slightly askew, the name clearly visible, Dr. Anya Sharma. Beside it was a special code, a string of letters and numbers that Brenda, in her rush to judgment, had completely ignored. It was a code that signified a status so far beyond platinum or diamond that it was known only to the airline's board of directors. The cabin noise dwindled to the sound of Rohan's soft, hitching whimpers and the almost silent clicks of phone cameras capturing her humiliation from a dozen different angles. Have you ever felt the weight of 100 eyes on you, all of them filled with scorn before a single person has asked if you need a hand? Brenda Carlson, however, was feeding on the attention. She straightened her perfectly pressed navy blue uniform, the silver apex wings on her lapel catching the soft cabin light. The slap had not been an act of desperation. It had been an injection of pure, unadulterated power. She felt a jolt of adrenaline, a thrill of control she hadn't felt in years. This was her stage, and the first-class passengers were her adoring audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, I sincerely apologize for this unfortunate disruption," Brenda announced, her voice projecting through the cabin with theatrical importance. "Apex Air is committed to maintaining a certain standard of comfort and decorum. Unfortunately, some passengers are simply unfamiliar with appropriate travel etiquette." A wave of murmurs, thick with self-satisfied agreement, rippled through the seats. A man in a Brioni suit, his face florid from pre-flight champagne, gave Brenda a thumbs up. "Thank God someone's finally maintaining standards on this airline," he boomed. Another passenger chimed in. "These people get a taste of luxury and think they can do whatever they please." The phrase, "these people," hung in the air, thick and poisonous. Anya said nothing. She didn't defend herself. She didn't raise her voice. She simply began to bounce Rohan gently, her rhythmic, steady motion a silent rebellion against the chaos. The baby's tiny fist, a perfect, miniature thing, uncurled and wrapped itself around his mother's index finger. It was a gesture of pure trust, a moment of profound connection that should have softened even the hardest heart. Instead, to the hostile eyes of the other passengers, it only seemed to amplify her perceived insolence. Brenda, emboldened by her audience, unhooked her radio from her belt with a flourish. Her voice was crisp with manufactured authority. "Captain Evans, this is Brenda in first class. We have a Code 3 situation. A disruptive passenger with an infant is refusing to comply with crew instructions." The radio crackled in response. Captain Robert Evans' voice, a gravelly baritone. "Copy that, Brenda. What's your assessment? How do you want to proceed?" Brenda's eyes glinted. This was her moment of triumph. "I'm recommending immediate removal before departure. She's already caused a 9-minute delay with this performance." Anya glanced at her own phone. The screen displayed in bold letters, 16 minutes until departure. Below it, a calendar notification was visible for a split second. 2:00 p.m. EST. Finalize Apex Air, Skyleap merger. All parties on standby. She discreetly tucked the phone away before Brenda could decipher the text. "Excuse me," Anya said, her voice quiet but clear, cutting through the ambient noise. "My ticket is for seat 3A. I paid for this service, and I would appreciate—" Brenda cut her off with a laugh so harsh it sounded like tearing metal. "Honey, I don't know what kind of scam you pulled to get a seat in this cabin, but your time is up. People like you are always trying to sneak your way into first class. I've seen every trick in the book, and trust me, yours isn't even original." Across the aisle, a young woman, no older than 20, had her phone up, the TikTok interface clearly visible. "Y'all, you are not going to believe this," she whispered to her growing audience. "This Karen flight attendant just slapped a mom holding a baby. This is wild." Her live viewer count was a rapidly spinning number on her screen. 950, 500, 4,200, but the comment section was a cesspool of instant judgment, a torrent of digital pitchforks aimed squarely at Anya. "Finally, a flight attendant with a backbone. If you can't control your kid, don't fly first class." That mom looks so entitled, OMG. Brenda is a hero. Pex Air hero. Brenda saw the phone, saw the live stream, and leaned into her role as the guardian of order. "Ma'am," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, "airline policy is crystal clear. If you cannot ensure your child behaves in a manner that doesn't disrupt the comfort and safety of other passengers, I have every right, in fact, a duty, to have you removed." Anya reached into her designer carry-on, a discreet but undeniably expensive Velextra bag, to retrieve a bottle of formula. As she shifted a stack of diapers, a flash of brushed metal caught the light. It was a card, heavier and sleeker than a standard credit card, with a minimalist, almost cryptic bird logo etched into its surface. It was visible for less than a second before she concealed it again. But something about its design felt alien, different from any frequent flyer card the other passengers had ever seen. Her phone buzzed again, this time with an incoming call. The caller ID, visible to the prying eyes of the man in the seat next to her, read, "Apex Air, Executive Aviation Office." She silenced the call with a swipe of her thumb. Brenda's eyes narrowed into suspicious slits. "Who do you think you're calling? Your baby daddy isn't going to bail you out of this one? You're playing with federal aviation regulations now, little girl." The insult, layered with racist and sexist undertones, struck Anya with the force of a second slap. Several passengers snickered. The businessman in the Brioni suit cleared his throat importantly. "Miss, You're holding up nearly 200 people with your little drama. Some of us have important business to attend to. Mergers to finalize. 14 minutes until mandatory pushback, Captain Evans's voice announced over the intercom, an implicit threat. Flight crew, prepare for final boarding completion. Anya glanced at her watch. It was a simple, elegant timepiece with a plain black leather band. But a closer look, a truly discerning eye, would have noticed the name engraved on its face, Patek Philippe, and on the back, a tiny, almost invisible inscription, "To my brilliant Anya. Together we'll touch the sky. JV." Brenda was building to her grand finale. "Ma'am, I am giving you one final opportunity to gather your belongings and deplane voluntarily. If you refuse, I will have no choice but to request federal air marshals to escort you off this aircraft. Do you understand?" The TikTok livestream rocketed past 10,000 viewers. The comments were a blur of hate and praise for Brenda. But now, a few dissenting voices began to appear, buried in the flood. "Wait, something isn't right. The mom is too calm. She's not even arguing. She looks composed. Too composed. That flight attendant seems way too aggressive. This feels personal." Near the window, a man who had been silently typing on a laptop suddenly paused. He was a well-known aviation industry blogger, and he'd been posting on a private forum for industry insiders. His thread was titled, "Witnessing Potential Discrimination in Real Time, Apex Air Flight 712. Within minutes, executives from rival airlines, FAA officials, and aviation journalists were following his updates. He recognized that something about Anya's demeanor didn't fit the disruptive passenger profile. She wasn't frantic. She wasn't defensive. She was waiting. Brenda grabbed her radio again, her voice ringing with triumph. "Captain, the passenger remains non-compliant, requesting immediate ground security assistance." "Copy that, Brenda. Ground crew is standing by at the gate." It was then that Anya spoke for the second time, her voice as steady and cool as a surgeon's scalpel. "Ma'am, I understand that you believe you are following protocol. However, I would strongly advise you to verify my passenger status before you take an action that is irreversible." "Irreversible?" Brenda's voice climbed an octave, a symphony of incredulity. "Lady, the only thing irreversible here is the stain your behavior is leaving on this airline's reputation. You think because you scrounged up enough money for a nice outfit and a first-class ticket, you can hijack an entire flight with your theatrics?" The woman in pearls leaned forward, her face a mask of condescending pity. "Young lady, in my day, parents understood their place. They knew how to travel with children without making a spectacle of themselves. This display is utterly shameful." More phones were out now. The incident was a multi-angle production. Facebook live feeds were active. Instagram stories were uploading. The hashtag #ToncherFlightDrama was beginning to trend in the Chicago area. But Anya's unnatural calm was starting to unnerve the more observant passengers. It was the composure of someone who didn't just know the rules of the game, but owned the entire chessboard. Rohan had finally settled, his whimpers subsiding, his tiny body molded against his mother's, soothed by her steady, unwavering heartbeat. His wide, dark eyes surveyed the cabin with an innocent curiosity that, instead of charming the onlookers, seemed only to intensify their irritation. 10 minutes, Brenda announced, her voice a final verdict. "Security will be here in 10 minutes, and this entire situation will be resolved, one way or another." Anya gently kissed Rohan's forehead and whispered something into his ear, too soft for any microphone to capture. But her eyes, as she looked up, held a certain knowledge, a deep, unsettling certainty that made the smartest people in the cabin suddenly feel a cold knot of dread in their stomachs. Something was about to change. The entire power dynamic of the aircraft was about to be inverted, and they had all just been caught on the wrong side of history. The curtain to the cockpit swung open, and Captain Robert Evans strode into the first-class cabin, his 4 gold stripes gleaming under the overhead lights. He was a man accustomed to absolute authority, a 25-year veteran of the skies who projected an aura of command that could quell passenger disputes with a single steely glare. "What in the hell is the situation here, Brenda?" His voice was a low growl, carrying the full weight of Federal Aviation Command. Brenda's posture straightened, her confidence surging at the arrival of her captain. "Sir, this passenger has been completely disruptive since the moment she boarded. The child has been screaming non-stop. She's refused every single crew instruction, and now she's being belligerent about deplaning." Evan's gaze fell upon Anya. His mind, trained by years of unconscious bias, quickly processed the scene. Young woman of color, a crying baby, a luxury diaper bag, a first-class seat. The pieces clicked together to form a narrative that perfectly aligned with Brenda's. It was a story he'd seen, or thought he'd seen, 100 times before. "Ma'am, I'm Captain Evans. I need to inform you that under Federal Aviation regulations, you are required to comply with all crew instructions without argument," he stated, his tone leaving no room for discussion. The TikTok livestream, now being shared by major influencers, exploded past 20,000 viewers. Chloe, the student filming, whispered breathlessly to her audience, "Oh my God, the captain is here. It's getting real, y'all. This is getting serious." Her comment feed was a waterfall of text. "She's about to get arrested on a plane. That captain looks pissed. Bye, Felicia. Hope they ban her from flying for life." Anya adjusted Rohan in her arms, her movements unhurried as she discreetly checked her phone. 9 minutes until the departure deadline. 9 minutes until what? 9 minutes until what, ma'am? Evans demanded, his patience wearing dangerously thin. "Whatever imaginary schedule you believe you're on does not and will not override federal air safety protocols." From the galley area, 2 men in plain clothes emerged. They were fit, their eyes constantly scanning, their posture radiating a quiet lethality. To the untrained eye, they were just passengers. But to anyone who knew what to look for, they were unmistakably Federal Air Marshals. Their mere presence escalated the situation from a customer service issue to a potential threat to national security. Air Marshal Diaz approached, his steps measured and cautious, his hand resting casually near the concealed weapon on his hip. "Captain, can you brief us on the nature of the disturbance?" "Passenger non-compliance," Evans replied curtly, his jaw tight. Refusing a direct order to deplane after the crew determined her behavior was disruptive to the flight. The aviation blogger, David, paused his typing to discreetly snap photos of the marshals. His forum post was now viral within the industry. 350 shares, over 1,000 comments, and it was growing exponentially. He knew this was no longer just an incident. It was a case study in the making. Brenda, sensing her ultimate vindication was at hand, picked up the cabin intercom handset. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice ringing with misplaced triumph. "We apologize for this extended delay, which is being caused by a single uncooperative passenger. We expect to have this resolved momentarily and be on our way." The announcement was a calculated move, designed to turn the entire cabin against Anya. It worked perfectly. A wave of angry, frustrated voices rose from the seats behind her. "Just throw her off the plane already. I'm going to miss my connection in New York. This is absolutely ridiculous. Some people have no consideration." The TikTok viewer count surged past 30,000. Local Chicago news stations, alerted by tipping services that monitor social media trends, began dispatching crews to O'Hare. The hashtag #BotcherApexAirMeltdown was starting to trend nationally. Through it all, Anya remained seated. Rohan was now calm, his large, curious eyes watching the commotion with the serene detachment of an infant. Her composure was beginning to feel almost supernatural, an eerie, unshakable stillness in the eye of a hurricane she had seemingly created. She was waiting for a specific, predetermined moment on a timeline only she was aware of. Air Marshal Chen flanked her other side, creating an intimidating triangle of authority. "Ma'am, for the final time, we need you to gather your child and your belongings and come with us. Please do this voluntarily." "To resolve this situation peacefully, I require exactly 6 more minutes," Anya stated, her voice still quiet, yet now imbued with an undeniable sense of command. Evans scoffed, his face flushing with anger. "You require 0 minutes. You have 0 authority on this aircraft. This is a federal vessel under my command, and you are creating a safety hazard. I'm ordering your removal now." The woman in pearls, sensing the climax, spoke loudly for the benefit of the surrounding cameras. "Captain, I have been flying for 60 years, and I have never seen such entitled, narcissistic behavior. It is precisely what is wrong with air travel today." Dozens of passengers nodded in fervent agreement. The narrative was cemented. A professional, heroic crew protecting safety and order against a disruptive, entitled mother. But David, the blogger, saw the cracks in that story. His industry experience allowed him to recognize the subtle cues everyone else was missing. He typed furiously, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Passenger is displaying 0 physiological signs of distress or agitation. Breathing is regular. Posture is relaxed. This is not the behavior of a non-compliant passenger. This is the behavior of someone in complete control. Something else is happening here. Anya's phone buzzed again, an insistent, vibrating pulse. The caller ID flashed for a brief moment. "Apex Corp, urgent. J. Vance." She declined the call once more. Brenda's eyes narrowed. "Who keeps calling you? Your boyfriend on the ground can't override federal law." The insult drew another round of smug chuckles. The businessman in the Brioni suit held his phone higher, ensuring his own livestream captured Brenda's decisive authority. 7 minutes until mandatory departure," Evans announced, his voice booming with finality. "Ground security is boarding the aircraft now." Through the windows, the passengers could see them. Airport security officers in tactical vests were jogging across the tarmac and assembling at the jet bridge. The flashing lights of their vehicles painted the cabin in strobing blues and reds. The situation had escalated far beyond a simple passenger removal. It now looked like a high-level security operation. The TikTok livestream hit 40,000 viewers. Apex Air was now the #1 trending topic in the United States. The ground security team boarded through the forward galley, their gear rattling ominously. They carried restraints, body cameras, and radios, everything needed for a forcible extraction. "Ma'am," the lead officer announced, his voice devoid of emotion. "By order of the flight captain and in conjunction with the federal air marshals, you are being removed from this aircraft. Please comply voluntarily to avoid the use of force." Anya looked around the cabin slowly, her gaze sweeping across the sea of recording phones, the hostile, judgmental faces, and the overwhelming display of authority arrayed against her. Rohan gurgled softly, reaching a tiny hand toward the lead officer's shiny badge. 5 minutes, she said quietly. Evan's face was a mask of pure rage. "You have 0 minutes! Officers, please escort this passenger and her child from my aircraft immediately." The security team tensed, preparing to move in. Passengers leaned forward, their phones poised to capture the dramatic climax. The TikTok viewer count hit 45,000. But something in Anya's eyes, a flicker of something that looked almost like pity, made the 2 air marshals pause for a fraction of a second. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't pleading. She wasn't bracing for a fight. She was waiting for a signal. Air Marshal Diaz hesitated, a flicker of professional doubt crossing his face. Ma'am, if you possess some form of legitimate documentation or have a concern that needs to be addressed, now is the time to— Diaz! Evans cut him off sharply. We do not negotiate with disruptive passengers. Remove her, now! Brenda stepped forward, a triumphant smirk playing on her lips. This is exactly why we have these protocols in place. Some people believe they can manipulate any situation with fake emergencies and social media theatrics. The cabin erupted in a smattering of applause. The livestream comments celebrated the crew's unwavering professionalism. Anya kissed Rohan's forehead and whispered something inaudible. Then, with a calm, deliberate motion that seemed to slow time itself, she reached for her laptop. She opened it, typed a single password, and clicked on a calendar link. 3 minutes. Time's up, Evans declared. Officers, proceed with removal. As the security officers took a step toward her, placing their hands on her armrests to restrain her, Anya angled the laptop screen so the aisle could see. The call connected instantly, and the face that appeared on the screen, projected onto a massive display in a state-of-the-art boardroom, was a face that made Captain Robert Evans' blood turn to ice water in his veins. "Hi, honey," Anya said softly, her voice carrying through the laptop's powerful speakers. "Sorry to interrupt the merger call. I'm having a little bit of trouble on your airline." The voice that answered belonged to a man every single Apex Air pilot knew, feared, and respected. It was the man who signed their paychecks, the man whose vision had turned the airline into a global powerhouse. It was Julian Vance, the chairman and chief executive officer of Apex Air. "Anya, what's wrong? Which aircraft are you on, sweetheart? I'll handle this personally." The cabin fell into a silence so deep and absolute, it was as if the air had been sucked out of the fuselage. The only sounds were Rohan's soft cooing and the distant whine of a jet engine. Brenda Carlson's face went corpse white, the blood draining from it as a tidal wave of catastrophic understanding crashed over her. Captain Evans staggered back a step, his 25 years of authority disintegrating into dust in a single horrifying second. The TikTok livestream exploded past 55,000 viewers, the comment section descending into pure, unadulterated chaos. Plot twist, she's the CEO's wife. OMG, they are so fired. Holy Durain%! The security officers snatched their hands away from Anya's armrests as if they were white-hot metal. Julian Vance's voice continued to emanate from the laptop, now stripped of all warmth, each word a shard of Arctic ice. "Captain Evans, Flight Attendant Carlson. I am watching this entire incident on a public live stream. You will both step away from my wife and my son immediately." Anya remained perfectly composed, gently rocking Rohan as 200 passengers and crew members stared at her, their minds struggling to reboot. 2 minutes until scheduled departure, Julian, she said sweetly into the laptop's microphone. "Cancel the departure," Julian's voice boomed back, cold and terrifying. "We have much bigger problems to address first." The woman they had shamed, assaulted, and tried to forcibly remove didn't just have a first-class ticket. She owned the entire airline, and everyone had just watched it happen. Live. The suffocating silence in the cabin was a physical entity, pressing in on everyone. 200 pairs of eyes were fixed on Dr. Anya Sharma, who now seemed less like a passenger and more like a queen holding court in the ruins of her employees' careers. Baby Rohan, blissfully unaware of the corporate earthquake his mother had just triggered, let out a happy gurgle. Julian Vance's voice, sharp and clear through the laptop speakers, sliced through the tension. "Anya, are you and Rohan physically safe right now?" "We're fine now, Julian," she replied, her voice a study in calm. "Although, Ms. Carlson did feel it was appropriate to slap me across the face while I was holding our son in front of the entire cabin." That single sentence landed with the force of a lightning strike. The passengers who had been so eagerly recording suddenly felt their phones weigh 1,000 pounds. The devices in their hands were no longer tools of detached observation. They were evidence. Evidence that they had gleefully documented the physical assault of their airline's owner. Captain Evans, his face ashen, was the first to find his voice, though it was strangled with desperation. "Mr. Vance, sir, this is Captain Evans. Sir, there appears to have been a profound misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Julian's voice was a weapon. "Captain, I am watching a live stream with 60,000 other people. Are you telling me that we all misunderstood when we witnessed your flight attendant assault my wife while she was holding my infant son?" The TikTok stream had indeed rocketed past 60,000 viewers. Chloe, the student, could barely keep her phone steady, her hands trembling as the comments scrolled by in an insane, unreadable blur. "The CEO's wife. I can't. I'm dead. Everyone on this flight is getting fired. This is the most legendary thing I've ever seen. Brenda is toast. Burnt toast. Plot twist of the millennium." Brenda Carlson had backed herself against the galley wall, her face a flickering slideshow of disbelief, terror, and a final, pathetic attempt at denial. This can't be real. It's some kind of trick. She's just a passenger with a screaming—" "Miss Carlson," Julian's voice cut her off, his calm more terrifying than any shout. "You just referred to my wife as just a passenger seconds after you physically assaulted her. Please, continue. I'm having this entire conversation recorded and transcribed for our legal department and the district attorney's office." The aviation blogger, David, sat frozen for a moment before his fingers began to fly across his keyboard. He deleted his entire previous thread and started a new one, titled in all caps, "Breaking Apex Air Crew Assaults CEO's Wife on Live Television." The post exploded, shared hundreds of times within seconds, as industry insiders realized they were witnessing a corporate implosion of historic proportions. Air Marshal Diaz slowly, deliberately, raised his hands in a gesture of surrender and backed away from Anya. "Ma'am, Mrs. Vance, we were responding to a direct report from the flight crew. We had absolutely no knowledge of your identity." "Of course you didn't," Anya replied, her voice soft as she adjusted Rohan's blanket. "That was rather the point of this exercise, wasn't it? To see how your passengers are treated when your crew makes assumptions based on nothing more than their own prejudice." Evans made a desperate scramble for damage control. "Sir, Mr. Vance, if we could please take this offline, discuss this privately, I am certain we can resolve—" "Privately?" Julian's laugh was a harsh, bitter sound. "Captain, 60,000 people are currently participating in this conversation. The time for privacy ended the moment your employee decided to turn this cabin into a stage for her bigotry." The woman in pearls, who had so loudly championed Brenda's authority just moments before, seemed to shrink into her seat, trying to become invisible. Her pronouncements about entitled behavior had been captured on dozens of live streams, and she was rapidly beginning to comprehend the professional and social fallout of her public statements. Anya reached back into her Valextra bag and retrieved the metallic card she had hidden earlier. It wasn't an executive card. It was made of black, anodized titanium, and it bore a single simple inscription in gold lettering. "Anya Sharma Vance, First Family." She held it up, not for the crew, but for the cameras that were still shakily recording her. A collective gasp went through the cabin. Passengers who had made snide remarks covered their faces, a sudden sick realization dawning on them that their own social media profiles were now inextricably linked to this viral disaster. "Honey," Anya said, addressing the laptop, "should I mention the Skyleap merger announcement scheduled for this afternoon?" There was a calculated pause before Julian responded. "Not just yet, sweetheart. Let's see how they handle the next 60 seconds first." Brenda's desperation finally boiled over. "This is impossible. I've worked for Apex for 11 years. I would know who the CEO's family is." "Would you?" Anya asked quietly, her question a silken dagger. "Have you ever seen a photograph of Julian's wife and son? Has the company ever shared our personal lives with its 50,000 employees? Or does this airline, like most major corporations, go to extraordinary lengths to protect the privacy of its executive families?" The question was unanswerable, and its implication was devastating. They had no idea who she was, because they were never supposed to. With shaking hands, Captain Evans grabbed his radio. "Ground control, this is Apex 712. We need to delay departure indefinitely. We have a situation on board requiring immediate corporate intervention." Ground control's confused voice crackled back. "Apex 712, please clarify the nature of your situation. We show a full security response already in progress at your gate." Evans looked at Anya, his eyes pleading. She simply nodded toward her laptop. The voice of Julian Vance, now patched directly into the aircraft's comms system, took over. "Ground control, O'Hare Tower. This is Julian Vance, CEO of Apex Air. You will cancel all security responses to Flight 712 immediately. I am handling this matter personally." The response was instantaneous. "Copy that, Mr. Vance. All units standing down." The TikTok live stream surged past 70,000 viewers. News vans from every major Chicago network were screeching to a halt at the perimeter of the airport. Apex scandal was now trending globally. But the final devastating blow came when Anya clicked another button on her laptop, activating the full video call. The screen split into a dozen windows, revealing a boardroom filled with the entire executive leadership team of Apex Air. They had been watching the whole thing. "Ladies and gentlemen of Flight 712, Anya announced to the stunned cabin, "allow me to introduce you to the Apex Air Executive Board, our General Counsel, and our Federal Aviation liaisons. They've been watching this entire incident unfold with me." The camera panned across the boardroom, showing grim, furious faces. Julian Vance was there, a distinguished, powerful man whose eyes burned with a cold, controlled rage that was more terrifying than any explosion of anger. "Ms. Carlson," he said, his voice now amplified by the cabin's PA system, "you physically assaulted my wife in front of more than 70,000 witnesses. Federal law, as I'm sure you know, defines assault on an aircraft as a felony, carrying a mandatory prison sentence." Brenda's legs finally gave out from under her. "Mr. Vance, I didn't know. I was just following safety protocols." "Safety protocols?" Julian's eyebrows rose. "Please, show me the specific federal aviation regulation that authorizes a crew member to slap a passenger who is holding an infant." She couldn't, because it didn't exist. The businessman in the Brioni suit was frantically trying to delete his social media posts. But it was too late. Screenshots of his comments were already being shared thousands of times. Captain Evans made one last desperate appeal. "Sir, emotions were running high. Mistakes were clearly made, but surely we can handle this through internal corporate channels." "Internal channels?" Julian cut him off. "Captain, as we speak, this incident is being formally investigated by the Federal Aviation Administration, the Department of Transportation, and the Department of Justice. I'm afraid internal channels are no longer an option." He gestured to a man in the boardroom. "Our General Counsel is, at this very moment, preparing a brief recommending federal charges: assault, battery, violation of civil rights, and felony child endangerment." Anya spoke for the first time in several minutes, her voice clear and resonant. "Julian, should I tell them about the permanent security footage?" A new face appeared on the video call. The head of Apex's legal department. "Mrs. Vance Sharma, federal regulations require that all interactions in the cabin are permanently recorded from multiple angles for security purposes. We have complete, high-definition audio and video documentation of the entire event. The implication of that statement crashed over the cabin like a tsunami. Not only had Brenda's assault been witnessed by a massive online audience, but it had also been captured in crystal clear detail by the plane's own unblinking, federally mandated cameras. Brenda Carlson slumped against the galley wall, a hollowed-out shell. Her 11-year career was over. Her professional certifications would be stripped. And criminal charges were now a certainty, but Julian Vance was not finished. Captain Evans, in your 25 years with Apex Air, can you tell me how many official discrimination complaints have been filed against crews under your direct command? Evans' face went completely white. Sir, I don't have those numbers readily available. I do, Julian replied, his voice like chipping ice. 19 complaints over the last 10 years, all of them quietly settled out of court, all of them buried by a corporate culture that I, admittedly, have failed to fix. Today, that pattern of behavior, and our complicity in hiding it, ends. Permanently. The revelation stunned the cabin. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was the public bursting of a systemic poison that had been festering for years, and today's live stream had just exposed it to the entire world. The TikTok viewer count hit 75,000. National news programs were breaking in with the story. Apex assault was the #1 trend on the planet. Air Marshal Diaz spoke carefully, choosing his words with extreme precision. Mr. Vance, sir, I must state for the record that we were responding to direct crew reports. We followed standard protocol for what we were told was a disruptive passenger situation. Standard protocol for what, exactly? Julian demanded. For a mother traveling alone with her baby? For a passenger who, according to your own body cameras, never once raised her voice, never made a single demand, and never resisted a crew instruction until she was physically assaulted? The marshals had no answer, because there was no justifiable answer. Anya kissed Rohan's forehead, and then looked directly into the lens of Chloe's still-recording iPhone. Her voice was steady, powerful, and filled with a profound dignity. For every single person watching this right now, please remember this moment. Remember how quickly assumptions can ruin lives. Today, nearly 80,000 people witnessed what happens when prejudice is allowed to wear a uniform. But you also witnessed what happens when that prejudice finally meets accountability. Chloe was barely breathing. This is the most insane, most incredible thing I have ever seen, she whispered. The CEO's wife just got assaulted by his own employees on live television, and he is tearing his own company apart to make it right. Julian Vance's voice filled the cabin with an air of absolute finality. Flight 712 will remain grounded. Every passenger will be deplaned and rebooked. This aircraft is now an active federal crime scene. Ms. Carlson and Captain Evans, your employment with Apex Air is terminated, effective immediately. You are both suspended pending criminal prosecution. Brenda finally broke, a raw animal sob tearing from her throat as tears streamed down her face. Please, Mr. Vance, I have a family, a mortgage. I made a terrible mistake. You made a choice, Anya corrected her, her voice gentle but firm. And choices always have consequences. Today, the consequences happen to be very, very public. The video call in the boardroom was expanding, with new windows opening to show federal investigators, top aviation attorneys, and a crisis management team. The full, awesome weight of corporate and federal power was now mobilizing in response to a single, viral slap. Julian addressed the entire cabin one last time. Ladies and gentlemen, for years, incidents like this have happened in the shadows. Discrimination based on the color of a person's skin, their gender, or the fact that they are traveling with a child. The only difference today is that everyone saw it. Everyone recorded it, and now no one will ever forget it. At that exact moment, baby Rohan, feeling the tension finally break, let out a loud, happy laugh. It was a pure, innocent sound of joy that cut through the wreckage of the last hour like a ray of sunlight through storm clouds. "The merger announcement can wait," Julian said, his eyes, even through the screen, fixed on his wife with a look of profound love and admiration. "We have more important work to do first." Anya smiled at the camera, her dignity not just intact, but magnified by everything she had endured. Change only happens when power is forced to confront prejudice in public. Today, 80,000 people learned what real accountability looks like. The main aircraft door hissed open. Federal investigators began to board, their cameras flashing, their voices low and professional as they began to secure the crime scene. The woman they had tried to remove now owned their futures, and the entire world was watching. In the 4 hours that followed, Apex Air underwent a corporate transformation so swift and comprehensive it would become the new gold standard in crisis management. Federal Marshals escorted a handcuffed Brenda Carlson and Robert Evans through the terminal, a gauntlet of news cameras documenting their walk of shame. Brenda's perp walk became the defining image of the scandal. The flight attendant whose prejudice had cost her everything, broadcast on a global stage. Her mugshot, released within hours, showed the hollowed-out face of a woman whose 11-year career had evaporated into a future of federal charges and permanent industry blacklisting. Evans followed, his captain's stripes having been physically stripped from his uniform before he even reached the police car. 25 years of authority and respect, reduced to the humiliating status of a federal defendant, witnessed by millions. The TikTok live stream, which peaked at an astonishing 94,000 concurrent viewers, was archived and studied as the most explosive moment of corporate accountability in social media history. Chloe, the student who filmed it, saw her follower count soar past 2 million overnight and was immediately inundated with offers from major news outlets. But the real revolution happened behind the scenes. An emergency board meeting of Apex Air was convened via video conference within 2 hours. Julian Vance, choosing radical transparency over damage control, live-streamed his opening statement to shareholders and the public. "Today's horrific incident was not an anomaly," he declared, his voice firm. "It was the symptom of a systemic disease of prejudice and complacency that we allowed to fester in the dark. We will no longer settle these cases quietly. We will no longer hide our failures. Starting today, Apex Air will become the undisputed industry standard for passenger dignity, safety, and absolute crew accountability." The Family Protection Protocol was announced and launched across the entire Apex fleet within 24 hours. New placards were installed in every aircraft. "Every family belongs here. Respect first, verification always." Mandatory, intensive crew training began immediately. Apex hired teams from the Nécité Sociale and the Anti-Defamation League to develop a new 40-hour bias awareness and de-escalation curriculum. Failure to complete and pass the course within 30 days resulted in automatic termination. The incident's impact rippled out from the company to the entire country. The Apex Passenger Bill of Rights, which explicitly outlawed physical contact by crew members except in clear, life-threatening situations, and mandated direct reporting of discrimination complaints to a federal oversight body, was drafted into a bill. Sponsored by senators who had watched the viral video with their own constituents, it became federal law within 6 months, forcing all U.S. airlines to adopt the new Thompson standards of passenger protection. FAA investigator Sarah Carter's preliminary report sent shockwaves through the industry. "The Apex Air incident," she wrote, "is representative of systemic patterns of discrimination across commercial aviation. Immediate, industry-wide reform is not recommended. It is mandatory." Brenda Carlson's federal trial was swift. The prosecution presented an airtight case with 94,000 witnesses, dozens of camera angles, crystal-clear audio, and official FAA documentation. She was found guilty and received the maximum sentence, 18 months in a federal prison, followed by 5 years of probation. Captain Evans was convicted on separate charges of enabling assault and willful dereliction of his duty to protect passenger safety. The verdict not only ended his career, but also voided his pension and all company benefits. The financial fallout was immediate, but not in the way experts predicted. Apex stock dipped 11% in after-hours trading, but staged a massive recovery within 48 hours as investors, and the public recognized the profound value of the company's decisive, transparent response. In a stunning reversal, corporate clients, particularly those with strong diversity and inclusion policies, began signing exclusive contracts with Apex Air. Business travelers, especially women and people of color, deliberately chose the one airline that had proven it would hold itself accountable. Within 6 months, revenue was up 23%. Customer satisfaction among diverse travelers soared to 97%, the highest in aviation history. Air Marshals Diaz and Chen voluntarily underwent the new bias training and became internal advocates for reforming law enforcement protocols on aircraft. The aviation blogger, David, was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize for his real-time reporting. His series of posts became required reading in business and ethics courses at universities across the country. But the most profound change was cultural. The condescending phrase, "people like you," was effectively erased from the Apex vocabulary. The default interaction from crew members shifted from suspicion to service, from "what's the problem?" to "how can I help your family travel more comfortably today?" The incident launched a movement. Anya and Julian established the Family Travel Foundation, funded with a $50 million personal endowment to provide free legal support for any passenger facing discrimination from any airline. 6 months after the incident, Anya Sharma Vance stood on a stage to accept the N28ACP's Vanguard Award for Courage. Her acceptance speech was short and powerful. "Dignity should not depend on your net worth or your connections," she said. "It is a fundamental human right. My family was fortunate enough to have a platform to force accountability. Our foundation's mission is to ensure that every family has that same power." The reforms, now known globally as the Apex Standards, were adopted voluntarily by airline alliances in Europe and Asia. Brenda Carlson's conviction became a permanent, cautionary case study in crew training manuals worldwide. The aircraft where the assault occurred was retrofitted with next-generation monitoring technology and renamed the Spirit of Accountability, serving as Apex's flagship for demonstrating its commitment to passenger protection. Baby Rohan, now a toddler, travels frequently with his parents. Flight crews often compete for the chance to work on his flights, eager to provide exceptional service to the child whose cries inadvertently sparked a global revolution in airline culture. Heartwarming stories began to emerge from other travelers, proving that the change was real. Parents shared videos of flight attendants offering to hold their babies so they could eat, of gate agents proactively seating families together, of a corporate culture that had shifted from hostility to help. Have you ever faced discrimination or been made to feel unwelcome while traveling with your family? It's time to share your story. Let us know in the comments below, because your voice is part of this movement. Change happens when we demand it together. If this story of justice and accountability inspired you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to see that one person's dignity can change the world. And make sure you subscribe to this channel for more incredible stories of resilience, strength, and the undeniable power of the human spirit to triumph over prejudice. Hit that notification bell, because every single one of us deserves to be treated with respect, and every parent deserves to be honored not shamed, for the profound act of loving their child.